right. Still feature, please. A hateful voyage to the Delta Quadrant. Peter and I have literally already spent an hour and a half talking about Star Trek already this evening.
For us, it's just been instant because we're using Anorak's Kremen temporal space-time, but for you, it's felt like a week since you heard us talking about this, so excuse our fatigue.
But we're talking now about part 2 of Year of Hell. So if for some reason you're catching this one, go back an episode.
Go back 15 episodes. Go back to like when I get my good mic. Episode 3?
Episode 4.
Episode 4, yeah. Those time travel ones, those early time travel ones suck anyways, but these new time travel ones, they're great. Also, go back and listen to our before and after podcast because, what was that one?
Cass reaches Ultra Instinct. No. That was the one where the gift. I forget what we named the one on before and after. But yeah, we really liked that episode. So
yeah, it was a good one.
It was good. We enjoyed it.
We don't know what the title is, but it was a good one.
It was fine. Just find it. Sure. Just keep listening until you find one.
Tell your friends. We haven't begged you guys for a while. Tell your friends. Listen to all our stuff. Buy our T-shirts that don't exist in this timeline.
That's fine.
Patreon, I think, is around in all the timelines.
That's true. That's around in all the timelines. Not the coffee mug.
Do you think, given the spiderweb nature of what the Kremen time vessel is doing, and because all of these worlds touch other worlds, and theoretically, like, there's no big expanses between the quadrants, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think what he's doing to rewrite stuff in the Delta quadrants reaching into the Alpha quadrant? I would have to say that, yeah. I mean, this is a big butterfly effect, right?
Yeah, I mean...
And why wouldn't you go back and kill the Borg while you're at it?
To a degree, I imagine there would be some impacts. I just think that the further away you get, the less and less it becomes. Like, there's a great lesson, actually, in this episode about unintended consequences of manipulating time and space,
mm-hmm.
right? About a comet and what eliminating a single comet does to essentially eradicating life within 25 light years and that sort of thing. The vastness of the galaxy is going to prohibit there being like vast changes across too much space from this little corner of the universe. You know what I mean?
The Borg.
Right.
Completely disprove your prop. Yeah.
I mean, like, they can't really affect the Borg very well, right?
I'm just saying that, one person, one thing can, in fact, have major repercussions that span the entire galaxy. But yeah, I think there's definitely going to be some buffering that goes on to the edges of this.
When we last left our heroes, Voyager was fucked. All of the extras have been put off the ship, so it's just main cast members now.
Mm-hmm.
And Tom and Chakotay have been captured by Space Boddicker.
Space Pokey. Play the song, Joe.
And Space Boddicker has them on his time ship and
on the Citadel.
Yeah, on the Citadel. And there's basically 2 parallel storylines from this point forward. One, far more interesting than anything else, is finally getting a deep dive on Space Boddicker and why he is the way he is. Because in part 1, you don't see much of Anorak. He's like in 2-3 scenes tops. There's not a lot with him going on. And it's in part 2 that you see more of him, you hear more of him, you get a lot of interaction with him and Chakotay and backstory. And that stuff is very cool and very interesting. And then the other line is basically Janeway slowly losing her fucking mind as her ship completely falls apart. And she paces around without her uniform on anymore. And as my wife pointed out, in a very generously padded bra.
I have never really seen... I don't know. You go back to macroism, you said the same thing, like they were trying to like sex her up. It just... I don't pick up on it with her and her Gary Busey hair. I think we'll make sure that is the case forever and ever. Don't we open up with the meteor storm hitting Voyager?
Yeah, that's one of the first things that happens because that's when like all the burn makeup gets put on. It's actually that they're hiding in a nebula first, and the nebula gas is getting in, and they have like the breathers on. That is cool. Like
the Minox are attaching to the hull, and they have to go out there and burn them off.
The continued like decayed nature of the battle damage that Voyager has taken has a lot of continued effects here. You got this, they're hiding in this nebula, but the gas is getting in because the ship's all fucked up and emergency bulkheads aren't all sealing all the time. Eventually, like the deflector's not working and like a meteorite storm suddenly is is a problem.
So this Nebula, she stays in there longer than the Doctor. It's like, hey, only 8 minutes. She stays in there 12 minutes. She burns her lungs up real bad. He's like, you need to rest. She's like, hit me with some fucking, steroids. And he's like, those are illegal in MLB. And she's like, I'm a captain, do it. So he's like, okay. But she still keeps coughing. And like, Janeway is a close talker, which we've talked about heavily.
Right.
And like, she's up there like close talking 7 and 9 and like coughing. And it's like, listen, you can be a close talker or you can have the black lung, but you can't do both. You're being like real shitty right now. Coughing blood all over Seven's pristine outfit.
It's like, you know how much of the ship's remaining energy goes into keeping this looking this way? Come on.
I thought she got a little bruise on her chin. Maybe it's just Janeway coughing lung and she smeared it.
Eventually she finally does that. We talked about last episode of Accident. It happens here where it's interesting. So I don't know how much deep into like the technical manual stuff that you get. I assume pretty deep.
We had Jack.
Yeah, Jack shared the one from Voyager on the trauma support group.
I have not had an opportunity to actually look at that. So they made a technical manual for Voyager, mostly for the writers to reference. Not that you would ever notice that, by the way. They go through like 600 shuttlecraft.
Right, and there's supposed to be 3.
Literally.
Specifically.
But they did not release. They said we're just going to make it into a full book. They did not make it into a full book, so it's a full PDF that never got released, and it's just floating around on the internet. And I think someone linked it, so check that out.
Yeah, Jack linked that, and so please join the trauma support group if you're interested in reading that. The V'ger Please Trauma Support Group. We love talking about Star Trek with all of our fans.
On the V'ger Please Trauma Support Group
and on the V'ger Please and the Trauma Support Group on Facebook, because we're boomers and that's where we hang out. The deflector, the navigational deflector, is what prevents a spaceship in the Star Trek science fiction universe from having a problem like when it's passing at high speeds, because even Impulse is high speed, right? It's approaching light speed.
Warp 1, yeah.
Yeah, it's like a closely approaching light speed.
So the deflector dish is a force field that goes out and just shoves all the shit out of the way.
Correct, like tiny little pieces of debris, right? That if you pass through it at that speed would like fuck you up. Well, if it's not working, suddenly a storm of meteorites is a real lethal problem for your ship. And so eventually Janeway has to Captain America dive with her makeshift Captain America shield into a burning wreck of a room that has the control for the deflector in it to turn it on so they don't all die. And her reward for doing so is to wake up in the makeshift triage center / mess hall with the Doctor with a whole bunch of new burn makeup on to represent her scars from the experience. And it's supposed to set off her desperation journey about like the ship falling apart and her whole mission falling apart. And I get what they were trying to do. I just think it just never found the right gear. It never connected,
I think it's just been done. And we've seen this Janeway too many times. I know what it is. I know what she's about. We're not learning anything new. She's hyper focused. She's obsessed with this thing, getting the crew home. And there's 2 things we know about Jane. 3 things. 1, she has terrible hair now.
Terribly awesome.
2, she is willing to do whatever it takes to get the crew home. And 3, which supplants 2 on a frequent basis, is she is not afraid to blow the ship up. The only person who keeps this crew from getting home is me.
I want to get my crew home.
You want to keep my crew from getting home? Well, guess what? You don't get to. Because I'm going to keep the crew from getting home.
I like that you managed to modulate your voice enough to get that 50 cigarettes feel. It's that Kate Mulgrew feel. It's good.
Chakotay.
Chakotay. Chakotay.
Yeah.
Chakotay.
Chakotay. The best spelling.
So
So she gets burned up pretty bad, and I think the pre-treatment burns are pretty legit looking and gross. I think the scars are kind of crappy, but whatever. I get actor comfort. And I think this is where the Doctor really gives her the riot act of like, you need to chill the fuck out, and if you don't calm down, I'm going to pull medical officer rank, and I'm going to shut you. I'm gonna take away your command. authority.
Yeah, he in fact goes there. He tries to revoke Janeway's command authority, and then
She threatens to kill him.
Yes.
And he's like, hey, you see how you just threatened to kill one of the 7 people left on the ship? That shows that you've got space madness. And she's like, oh, I'm so sorry. You're right. I talked without thinking. I would not shut you down. But no, I'm still the captain, and there's nothing you can do to stop me because we're far away from the Federation. And when we get back, I'll see you in court-martial hell. Peace out.
The more interesting subplot is the return of Co-Opte.
So we jump back over to the Citadel, which is Space Boddicker's
science lair.
Science lair, yes. Powered by the lava of the nearby volcano. And he has had Chakotay and Tom Paris in Space Pokey for several months in isolation. We find out that Tom, like a fish to water, has been shanking people and causing problems, shoot 3.0.
I do like that Space Boddicker says I've never experienced someone as just out of control as Tom Paris. He just will not calm down.
He's got the space pipe. He's trying to crawl in the vents.
He put a bandana on and said something about Forsuiter.
Yeah. He tried to kill our space Jesus over some medical packs. But you, Chakotay, have been pretty cool. And so he's got Chakotay, he's got Paris, and he's got this big buffet set up. And he's like, hey, so let's talk. I don't want to be the bad guy here. You guys are, in a rough spot. I'm in a rough spot. I think we can help each other out. Enjoy some of this food. Enjoy some of this wine. It's really rare. Wink, wink, wink. We're going to get to that in a second. He lays out his conundrum. It's like, look, your ship is causing all sorts of problems for us in these calculations we're trying to do. If you guys play ball with me, I think we can set a situation up where I can get you closer to your home and help you out, and you just leave us to go here. Also, by the way, I'm kind of crazy, and I am erasing entire civilizations at the drop of a hat. Oh, and all this food you're eating, this is all cuisine that exists from species and civilizations that I have eradicated. This Caesar salad here, this is from the long lost Roman Empire, and this wine, this is from I don't know,
some species of shithead that
these
thankfully doesn't exist
yellow-tailed
anymore.
kangaroos of I don't know anything about wine. I know Lambrusco. This carbonated pop wine you can buy at Aldi's. This isn't around anymore. This is hard. Killed those guys. These Triscuits, these are a big deal. It's such a gruesome. I thought that was probably my favorite part of the whole episode, was the fact that he has all of these artifacts on the ship and more. And it's not just that he calls it, this is more than a weapon. This ship, this is a museum. And I think he likes the fact that he's the last person to know about these things.
Right. It's because it's not only that he destroyed them, that they never existed. There's no memory of them except for him, because he made it so they never happened.
And he's eating this stuff now.
Mm-hmm.
And he's relishing the fact that the people on the ship are the only ones who have any hint that these great civilizations existed in another life.
He's convincingly portrayed as equal parts rational and insane. That there is a part of him that there was probably at one point he was a very just normal, rational guy. And that part of his personality is still there as he's talking about Voyager and what his actual mission is, which he reveals in his dialogues with Chakotay. He's a Kremen scientist, and he invented this weapon. And the idea was to use this weapon to erase their biggest foe.
Their failure.
And they did so. So they used the weapon to destroy the Kremen's greatest rival. And then that's when they experienced the first unintended consequence, which is, and I thought this was such a neat detail, was that despite the fact that this was a huge rival for us, our contact with them through the millennia, and the implication also is some breeding, introduced into the Kremen genome a resistance to a disease that, without their existence, ravaged the Kremen and wiped them out. And so without even thinking of it, by erasing it out of time, this foe of theirs, they made themselves weak to something else entirely. And that opened up all of this problem that they'd had. Essentially, the way I would look at it is trying to like continuously go through a document with whiteout and changing parts of it, but then realizing they got to change another part to make that make sense. Okay, I got to go back and change this part now.
To anybody who's ever tried to put page numbers in an index.
Yeah, like as things shift through the rest of the document, now you have to go back and change everything here. And one small change can just set you back entirely.
And the cool way, like you said, it shows these equal parts rational and crazy. And you're presented with a very rational face with just little slivers and cracks of the crazy. And I like that he's able to make those so potent through mild conversation that it becomes very clear that this dude's off his fucking rocker. His rationale is compromised because he's got personal investment in his wife's colony. And we'll later come to find out that he's even got like this paranoia persecution complex where he believes that time is a living thing and out to spite him personally. And that's going to be the fun part of this second part is all the stuff boiling through. But during this dinner, he's like, hey, why don't you eat all this stuff from all these dead empires that no longer exist because of me? Ha ha ha. And if you work with me, we can do something pretty swell here for your ship. And Tom's like, no, fuck you. I'm not playing ball with this. And he's like, well, listen, if you don't want to work with me, I can put your ass back in the pokey. And then Tom's like, I love jail. See you later, Chakotay. I'm going to go back to jail.
And Chakotay, though, the emergence of Co-opte happens in this moment. At first, you think maybe it's all part of a ruse.
That's what I thought. I'm like,
right.
Okay, he's going to play him and be like, oh, yeah, I'm really interested. Tell me more while I, steal the keys off your desk.
Exactly. That's what you would think the move is. But no. Chakotay seriously starts to buy into this crazy man's ramblings about changing the time-space continuum. And, it's straight up, but Hitler had some good ideas, too. Like, that is what I couldn't think... that is what he's saying, is, like, this mass-murdering, crazy man who's erasing all civilizations from time and space to, get his wife back... he's done good things.
This is Chakotay, the same guy who wouldn't let Harry Kim use a tricorder on some spider-webbed up dudes on Space Spider Asteroid. And now he's like, I would like to know more about your genocidal approach to time travel. Please. Perhaps there's a pad I could read up on.
Do you have a
So
pamphlet?
Space Boddicker is like, I like the cut of your jib. Why don't we go over here and talk some more? And starts to clue him in. And these guys start becoming buddies. And like you said, I thought he was just buttering him up for the big betrayal. No, Co-opte is back. He has bought in record time. I'm going to have to go back and get the Co-opte line chart.
It's instantaneous and it's completely unearned. Like we praised Kirkwood Smith already in the prior episode, his acting skill. And certainly you've already mentioned the power and how he is able to convey this through simple conversation and strike a balance between rational and crazy such that he remains sympathetic despite the fact he's clearly wrong. The viewer is not intended to ever interpret from his actions that he is right. Just simply that he is tragically flawed.
Yes.
He's a family man. He's lost his entire family. As he mentions to Chakotay later, it's like, I didn't just get my wife killed. I caused my wife, my kids, and my grandkids to not exist in time. My whole family isn't dead. They never existed, which is so much worse, right? And so he's desperate to fix that. Of course, tragically, he's doing so by doing it to everyone else, right? To try and strike this balance and going back and essentially visiting this trauma on other people without really registering that that's what he's doing. So he's sympathetic, but he's not supposed to be someone you're like, oh yeah, he's fine. He just needs to be led in a different direction. Chakotay's like, no, it's just fine. Yeah, it's just, I can use this. I can manipulate space time and get his technology to really get Voyager in the right place. What?
Yeah.
What? You were saying before, let's not work with the Borg. Let's avoid giving power to like a horrifically powerful enemy. And then you come across a crazy Captain Ahab, time space manipulating,
megalomaniac.
And you're like, no, this is cool. This is a guy I want to get in bed with.
Hey,
That's
man, give
fine.
me a piece of chalk. I want to get on this chalkboard action. It's a very sad ship overall. It's a very sad story overall. You're erasing entire civilizations from existing. His talks about how he erased his family, having to live with that. We'll come to get to know his first officer, who gets buddy with Tom Paris and is very clearly not happy with the situation. I think everybody after that 98% restoration win understands that this dude's off his rocker.
And I will say also, it kind of color in the details of what a big deal that 98% was in the second half of the episode. You really got to start to understand, like, that really should have been when they stopped. Yeah. Like, that was an irrational choice on Anorex's part to move them past that.
He talks about how for the first couple dozen years, he still celebrated his brother's birthday and his mom and dad and his friends until it finally dawned on him that he's celebrating birthdays for people who never existed and that they all exist alone. And it's some really good high concept sci-fi to think what life has to be like for the people on this ship that exists outside of time. You're trapped in this
ageless outside of time. Yeah.
I mean, it's like, take all your vampire stories about what if you lived forever, locked in, wherever you're at in the status quo, doing terrible things to the universe, and just wanting it all to be over, and you can't because you are. I mean, it's a really good story about 200 years of hell,
and like the hubris of their technology allows them to continue to try and like. It's the classic Scythian task. They're trying to push the boulder uphill, and they can get really close to the top, but they will never actually be able to get it to the top, and it's going to roll back downhill, and they're going to push it back up again. And they're aware, like, of how futile the task is to get it perfect, and how frustrated they are with the obvious lack of rationality on the part of their leader, where they got it closer than they had ever been. They called it a miracle that they got that close, and they weren't allowed to stop because, Anorex didn't get his wife back. And so the mission isn't over. And they really want it to be done. And they don't spend too much time telling you that. They show you that. And I've said before, when they show you rather than tell you, the show is so much better. Remember Resistance?
Yeah.
How much of that was we're going to see it rather than have to be told that through performance? Like that, I forget the name of the guest star. He was the guy who won the Oscar that was the guest star there, who was the Resistance dad.
Yeah.
Like you learn so much just by experiencing that rather than
body language
and all that rather than anything else. So, it's really well done on their part. And that's why this is such a gripping part of the episode, because all the stuff on Voyager with it continuing to decay and Janeway's going crazy and everyone wants to stop her.
I think there's a good story going on in Voyager to the point that, they're kind of in the same position, that you've got Janeway locked on her goal and the rest of the crew trying to pump brakes on things, and her just,
that's true.
Fuck it. We're going to, the both leaders on both ships are obsessed because Janeway's like, we've been in this nebula too long. We came in here to lick our wounds and heal. Fuck it. We're getting out of here now. And 7 to 9 busts around and says, that's a bad call. And Janeway's like, how dare you, oppose me in one of these meetings? And it's, like, hey, I brought everybody here to get together so we're all on the same page and let's share ideas. And then immediately shut the meeting down. We're going to do this. And there's opposition. No, we're going to do it anyways. And I'm like, they're doing a nice job showing that these captains really aren't that dissimilar. Just, one of them's destroying reality, the other one's just destroying her ship. But
I mean, that's, I'll be honest, I hadn't thought of the parallel, but now that you mentioned, it's really obvious. Yeah. Like, both of them become blind to everything else around them, to the detriment of everyone else around them.
Tuvok drops a line shortly after where he's like, listen, 7 to 9, you can't bust the captain out like that. She's like, well, even if I'm right and she's wrong. And he's like, well, listen, what's he say?
The captain is always right.
If there's one thing, the captain's always right, and I have absolute trust in Janeway's decision, blah, blah, blah. And all I hear is, yeah, one time I did do mutiny with Seska.
Mutiny with Seska. With Seska. In conspiracy with Seska.
But, other than that one major time, I just got my slap on the wrist. It wasn't a big deal. It's not like I got caught kissing Balan out in the hallway or anything. The only time Janeway has ever really delivered fury onto people.
So, the episode progresses to its climax in that they don't show how or why Voyager makes friends in this part of space. I guess it's not important.
We've seen them do it enough times that it's like, okay. And you know what? Good. Show me examples of Voyager's side quests and good deeds coming back to help it, and when they need help, that they can fly into a bad situation with a rolling crew. I don't need to see her befriend these people. I know how she does it. Great.
And she manages to befriend a couple races and convince them that Anorex is out there changing time and fucking with things, and they have to stop them. And comes up with a plan. Because what Tom does is eventually befriend the first officer enough to convince him that, let me get a word out to Janeway. Tell her where you guys are. Maybe we can find a way to finally put an end to this. He's like, okay, I'm buying this. And then he has the tougher task of convincing Chakotay to come back off the Coopte ledge and not buy into this. And it actually takes Space Boddicker erasing another civilization right in front of Coopte for him to be like, oh, I guess this guy might be bad after all.
Tom's like, listen, I got the biggest prison jailbreak I've done to date. And I've done some doozies, Chakotay. You're going to like this. And Chakotay's like, Coopte's like, no. He's like, but come on. And Coopte's like, no, this is all a good idea, and I think I can manipulate the situation, and we can make something good happen here. And Tom's like, but logic. And Coopte's like, but I've gone native. And then Tom's like, well, fuck you. I'm going to do this. And then Coopte's like, listen, if you're not going to do it, and I order you, and if we can't rely on chain of command, I'm just going to kick your fucking ass.
I'm going to Dolby punch you right here, right now.
So, and that brings up a good question now. Who would win in a fight between Chakotay and
Tom Paris?
Tom Paris.
Okay, that's an excellent question. I have several different answers for you.
This is assuming that even though this is a prison situation, Tom has not secured a shank yet.
Okay, I was going to say, is this a true prison situation or not? If so, Tom wins 10 times out of 10.
Tom, where'd you get that sharpened toothbrush?
My butt. I was saying, my prison pocket's been there the whole time. So
ever since the shoot, this baby hasn't left.
If we are assuming just a straight up fist fight without any kind of prison enhancement, I'm going to say Chakotay has the edge because of the power of the Dolby punch. We have seen the earth shattering, cross the body, just pure unrestricted, might of the Dolby punch.
Chakotay's bigger. If he puts his ass into it, he's probably got a better shot. But I have to imagine that Tom's been in prison, been in more fights. I mean, granted, Chakotay was a terrorist.
But he's not a very good one.
No, he's not.
We know that. And Tom's a scrapper. I'm not saying he wouldn't put up a fight.
Tom does Klingon yoga.
He does. And
he wrestles around with Klingons in bed. I think I gotta go with Tom, man.
And Dolby punch is so good, though. He knows how to punch. He's a fight. We're going to find out in season 5 that he used to be a boxer.
No, we already know that from the crewman. Everybody loved that. We never.
Oh, yeah, that's right. He got into fights.
He was a mining colony, blue-collar brawler.
So, I think if we're talking technical fighting skill, it's Chakotay. If we're talking scrapping skill, it's Tom Paris. I'd say it's a fight, but
well, I'm glad they don't show us what happens. While Coopte's threatening to kick Tom's ass, the alarms go off, and we find out that, like you said, there is going to be an unscheduled adjustment. Coopte, who feels like he has befriended Captain Space Boddicker, is like, hey, listen, we didn't discuss this. And he's like, no, I had a moment of inspiration in the shower this morning. We're going to fiddle around with this thing. And he's like, but we can do this without killing more people. And he's like, we're going to do this anyways. Fire. And that's the moment where Co-Opte is forced to see in plain sight that there is no changing this man, that he is, in fact, a bad guy, and that the situation is beyond repair.
This finally leads Chakotay and Tom to instituting the mutiny plan. So they get word to Janeway that they can set the situation up to get the time core of the ship offline, so that instead of it being outside of time and space, it enters a real space again and is vulnerable. And then Tom points out the ship's actually not very well defended. Its hull and shielding are quite weak because of everything that's necessary to phase it out of time. So when it's in real space, it's very vulnerable to assault. And Janeway summons up all the friends that they've made in this part of space to launch an attack against Anorex's ship after it's been disabled. So
there was a line I want to throw in there real quick, because we're skimming over a lot of Anorex sympathy moments where he is spending quality time with Co-Opte about, his poor wife and all this. The line I wanted to call out specifically is that, where he starts laying out this persecution complex where, again, he believes that time is a sentient thing.
Yeah. And
time is aware that what he is doing is a direct violation to it. And that time is playing this cruel game where it's playing keep away with this colony. It knows where his wife is. It knows what he wants, and it's just dangling it over his head. And that the line, something along the lines of like, the irony of all of this is that I thought I was sitting there figuring out how to save our people with this weapon. In fact, what I was calculating was my wife's fate. And I thought that was a really powerful line.
It was shades of the time is the fire in which we burn line from Generations. Is what it reminded me of. The way that Kirkwood Smith talks about like time having moods, and the way he talks about it, Chakotay is so intense and so personal to him, and the way he's able to convey. It's like, even though this dialogue is objectively so silly, but it doesn't matter. You don't think it's silly. Like you think of it objectively and you look at the lines and it's like, oh, really? But like you hear it and you watch the scene, you're like, I feel it. I see it. I see where this guy's coming from. I see how centuries of doing calculation after calculation and trying to find the answer and just always coming up short makes you think like, it's mocking me. Time itself is mocking me. It knows it wants me to change it. It knows it wants me to get my wife back, and it is just denying me. It can't be any other rationale for it, and you get it.
I think the last time we saw a guest star on the show who could take what should have been silly lines and really pull them off well was back in Cold Fire. What was that dude's name?
Gary Graham.
Yeah, and he knocked it out of the park, and I'd say Kurtwood Smith does an even better job with this.
That scene is also important because it sets the table for how they chose to end it. And I know that there was a version of this where they were going to end it with Space Boddicker's like supposition about time having an alpha form ended up being true. Yeah. So if you read the memory alpha on this episode, they had a lot of different ways to end it. And one of them was, in the end, actually time was like purposefully keeping this piece of what he wanted. Like there's a suggestion that was true. They obviously wanted a different ending, but that ending is still conveyed here, and that is that he is the reason all of this has happened, and he does not see that he is the reason why all of this happened. Out. Yeah. So this episode ends.
Oh, we can jump right in.
Well, to explain what I'm talking about, I have to explain the ending. Mm-hmm. So in the end, the ship itself is destroyed. The time ship itself is destroyed. It is destroyed in a temporal inversion on the ship itself. It erases the ship from time. Okay? Mm-hmm. And it is the perfect solution to the problem. Right? If the time ship never existed, then nothing the time ship ever did ever happened. And for all of his ability, he's blind to the obvious solution of, oh, if I'm the reason why all this happened, then why don't I eliminate the thing that made this happen?
Because he's the anti-hero to Janeway. And as Janeway's
Right.
third rule of character is, I'll blow the goddamn ship up myself. That never occurs to him. That,
Yeah.
you know,
He's too wrapped up in the arrogance of his accomplishment to actually understand that he is attempting to solve for a solution that can never be solved. Like, this is too complex for him to ever get to the solve for X that he wants. And the answer's been staring him in the face the whole time, that he has to admit defeat and destroy that which has brought him to this point. And if he does that, he actually gets what he wants. But it's this perfect balance to the situation. And this scene where he's explaining all of this, like, when they show you what happens in the end, you're like, of course that's what happened. He would be at home with his wife happy, because he never had the thing that took that away from him, you know? And I thought that was really poetic.
Before we get to the ending, there's a moment where Janeway's assembling her armada of 5 ships.
Yeah.
Voyager looks like it got turned into a cat's play toy, and there's very large chunks of hull completely missing. There's no good reason at all that Voyager should be going into this fight. She's Cutco sales pyramided these other races. Hey, listen, there's a super powerful weapon out there. Full disclosure, the guy flying it's like super petty, and if you fuck with him, he's like gonna erase your species from ever existing. But if you can give me like 2 ships each, I think we can go fuck with them. And that rusted up Buick Regal out there that looks like someone fucking towed it over here. Yeah, the one that's like leaking plasma and piss everywhere. I'm gonna fly that in there with me. That's gonna be the command ship. And these guys are like, yeah, that's a fucking sweet idea. Sign us
Here's
up.
my space hoopty.
Yeah.
I'm totally legit, guys. I'm a legit Starfleet captain.
Look at me. I'm wearing a sweaty tank top. I'm covered in fucking burns like some meth head. That's the Starship Voyager. That is completely not a stolen RV full of meth lab equipment that keeps exploding on us.
Did I mention I have a board?
Yeah, I got a board too, by the way. Hey, listen. I'm credible, all right? Q wanted to fuck me. That's my claim to fame. So she's like, okay, you guys, you're going to go on these ships, and then you guys, you're going to go over there, and then Tuvok's like, hey, listen, we got to have a touching going away moment where I'm going to be like, you don't need to stay on Voyager because it's not going to survive hitting a pothole in the road, let alone fighting the Death Star Citadel. So why don't you just come over on one of the other ships? Oh, no, I got to go down with the ship. You know how it goes. And it's like, didn't we tell the whole crew to like escape in escape pods and shuttlecraft and that we were going to meet up with them? Like, you are so dedicated. I don't know if it's dedicated to killing the Anoraks, Space Boddicker. I don't know if it's dedication that I'm going to get Tom and Chakotay back. But like, you also have like 100 people-ish waiting for you somewhere else, maybe, you know, assuming space whales didn't eat them on the way there, that they still need a ride to get home, which is this, and that's that same thing you want to like go right off into the sunset like a crazy person. But Tuvok gets his going away speech with Janeway, and I thought that it's funny that the 2 best character development moments, I think, out of the standard crew both involve Tuvok, who's usually not one of the strong performers for interpersonal relationships.
You know, he's come a long way from, you know, Tuvok in charge babysitting in season 2.
Yeah.
I feel like they found a better way to put it, because they did that in The Raven too, where he was like the emotional support Tuvok for 7 of 9.
Yeah.
But it kind of worked a little bit there too. Like, it worked better, and it worked well here as well. Like, because they had all those scenes with him in 7 of 9, and then, you know, his interactions with the captain. Like, he had more scenes that seem to fit kind of the lane he can occupy when it comes to these kind of things. But they do it. They do the scene, and they have the big fight. There's a really, really rad sequence where one of the ships
It's fucking dope. That collision looks good.
So one of the ships gets disabled and crashes in to Voyager's saucer section, just like scrapes across it.
Scalps it.
Yeah, and just like takes out huge chunks of the hull again.
Which is a really great case for why the most important part of the starship, the bridge, should not be on the very top of the most exposed part.
You ever, you love Battlestar Galactica?
Yeah.
Have you ever heard Ron Moore talk about that?
No.
So Ron Moore, obviously, originally TNG,
DXG,
and then DS9, and then very, very, very briefly Voyager. And one of the things that when he was designing the BSG reboot stuff was like, the bridge is going to be in the middle of the fucking ship. It's not going to be in the front. It's not going to be on the top. It makes no fucking sense in space. It's going to be in the middle of the ship that is connected to everything and is the most protected part. Because where else would it be? You know, like, that makes no sense for it to be in those places. It was like a huge pet peeve of his.
Yeah. And anybody who has little Starship action figures is like, wait, this thing hits everything.
Yeah.
Right
there. Looking at the
Look
Eagle
at this. Put it upside down. What's the first part that hit? Look at the whole ship. I have Voyager action figure Eagle Moss thing, and I've put it upside down, and the whole ship balances perfectly, and the only part touching the table is the bridge.
Yeah. It just makes no sense.
But yeah, so this
I take it back. It makes no sense logically. It makes sense from the perspective of when Roddenberry made Star Trek, the idea was the bridge of all ships was like on a high point because that's how ships on sea navigated.
Sure.
You know, like, so you'd be able to see, like, so when they designed the spaceship, they decided to design it the same way, and obviously this is taking its cues from the Roddenberry era. So I get the stylistic reason why, but from a logical reason, it makes no sense. It should be in the middle of the ship.
So the takeaway there is you should go and buy Star Trek
Eagle Moss figures. Yeah, they're great.
They're
very
awesome.
detailed, and they're like $20. Anyway.
But so there's 2 magical space friendships from each magical space faction.
Which you never see. You don't see their faces.
It's fine.
It's fine.
We didn't really ever talk about what the Kremen look like. The Kremen look like the other guy, the Zal look like Zoobly Zoo dudes. And we'll post some pictures of Zoobly. Post the girl one. Her. Post that.
That is terrifying.
The furries went to glamour shots at the moment. The Kremlin look like some dudes with some crusty temples. There's something about their design too that makes it look like maybe these guys have something going on that puts them a little different timeline than everybody. It's something temporal about them.
Yeah,
because it's on their temples, temporal.
Yeah. Maybe that was intended, but like they have like a time sense or something.
Yeah.
Like, I get it.
So one of the ships, wigs out, scrapes along Voyager. Voyager is now hella fucked.
Yeah, and meanwhile, on the ship itself, the first officers revolted and powered down the temporal core.
Mm-hmm. Sabotage the whole thing. The
time ship has come into real space and is like shooting like all kinds of like real weapons now.
Mm-hmm.
And meanwhile, like Tom is attempting to essentially sabotage the ship and put it in a position where it's going to be vulnerable. He succeeds, but all of the magical friendships get disabled, and only Voyager is still flying, despite having a huge piece of its saucer completely missing. And that's when Janeway does what Janeway does best.
Rule number 3.
Destroy the ship, and decides to ram the Citadel with Voyager directly, under the supposition of, if I destroy the time ship, maybe I will reset the timeline. Now,
that's a big
if. That's a big if.
That's a crazy space madness if.
My quibble from this part, like the first quibble we had was, this is a clear reference to an episode that Kes was in, that had direct reference to something Kes did that never referenced what Kes actually did. It made no sense. My quibble with this half is, there is no reason at all that Catherine Janeway has been given, as far as we can see, that the destruction of the ship will mean anything but the destruction of the ship. Like, there's been no line of dialogue in the whole show.
I mean,
that blowing this up means...
The Last Jedi has not been viewed yet. We don't know that you can just ram ships and fix problems.
Well, I mean, I would buy that she thinks I can ram the ship and just blow it up.
Sure.
But she thinks she can ram it, blow it up, and this will reset the timeline. And it like took a specific temporal inversion event to do that. That just so happens to happen.
I hate time travel, but if there's one thing I know how to do, it's that you can fix a time conundrum by shooting in the hole.
It's true.
That's a callback to the candy corn tragedy, where our big penultimate resolution to how to fix a planet that's on the eve of destruction is to shoot a phaser into an atmospheric butthole.
So the writers, according to the Memory Alpha, like they had all these ways to fix it, and eventually one of the producers was like, just have a ram the ship into the other ship and reset the timeline.
It's real. Our viewers are stupid.
Right.
And this is the easy way. And to be fair, the Voyager ramming the main bad guy ship looks pretty fucking cool.
It is cool.
It's not every day you see a hero ship in Star Trek slam into something else.
And like collapse in. It's real well done.
And this
CG.
isn't like, reworked, remastered stuff. This is 97 original footage, and it's pretty fucking cool.
However, this brings us all the way back, I think, to something we talked about now 2 hours ago by our relative sense, and that is that this is a bottle episode.
This is the bottle episode. This is the bottle episode that all bottle episodes are to ever be judged on. This is the hugest, most biggest pile of what if done right across the board. And this isn't just a bottle episode. This is and it was all a dream.
Yeah, this is the next shot after the temporal inversion on the ship erases it from history it says day one at the bottom. And it's Voyager just rolling through Kremen space. It's totally healed. Everyone's alive. Nobody is disheveled. Clean. Of course, Seven of Line looks great, but
Janeway's hair still unfortunately looks terrible.
And they're talking about their new astrometrics lab, and they come across a guy, same captain from the first episode, and this time he's just kind of just businessy. He's just like, please.
He's real cool. He's like, you shouldn't be here. This is a war zone. And they're like, well, we're just passing through. And he's like, well, stay away from these places and we'll be cool. And they're like, okay. And he's like, peace.
So, like, very professional and not very hostile. And they just continue on. And the last shot of the episode is actually Anorak's at home with his wife, working on something on his desk. And his wife, like, asking, hey, will you take the afternoon and go out with me? And he's convinced and says, I can make the time. One last time pun for our time travel episode, and walks away from the desk. But we see on the desk he's been working on like the same kind of time manipulation science that the weapon was based on. So again, it's an elegant solution that he has everything he was always looking for because he never made the mistake to begin with, but it doesn't prevent him from making the mistake again in the future.
Well, as soon as this thing wrapped up and everybody is happily
ever aftered. Yeah.
My wife's first comment is, okay, so the moral of the story here is that suicide causes happy endings for everyone. And I was like, yes.
Your wife has a unique perspective on the dark side of the human psyche.
That is why Janeway is so quick, I guess, to blow the ship up all the time, as she knows that just by killing herself, she's going to fix all of the problems. We just saw it happen. Great two-parter, great episode. The Kess stuff aside, I agree completely that the biggest failing is that, again, this is it was all a dream. The great stuff we established with Tuvok and 7 of 9 gets erased. Tom's cool accolades for building the Titanic hull plating, which we didn't really talk about. All that stuff never happens. The audience gets to see it. None of it gets retained. But boy, when we have these homeostasis reset opportunities, do something bold, do something crazy, show something significant on the screen that makes it worth our time if you're just going to reset things anyways. And I think for It Was All a Dream bottle episode, this is the right way to do it.
I agree that it's the best bottle episode. And in some ways, it's spiritually the avatar of Voyager in that it's very well done, but it's a bottle episode, right? I'm not taking it away from it. It's a great hour and a half of Trek. It's really worth watching as one piece.
One of the best guest actors. I mean,
great guest actor.
To my knowledge, he has not yet been a part of Better Call Saul. But, there's still at least one more episode to go. So
maybe I'll sneak on there.
Yeah.
But
Bob Odenkirk, if you're listening, please reach out to Kurtwood and see if he'll, be a client of Saul's. That'd be really cool.
But I don't know if I really agree that it's quote unquote the best episode of Voyager. Because it's a bottle episode. I think there's some
Voyager is bottle episodes.
Not all of it is.
It's got everything. It's got action. It's got 7 of 9. It's got 7 of 9 looking good. It's got everybody else looking so bad that 7 of 9 looks even better. It's got ships ramming ships.
I think that there are episodes of Voyager that we have already watched that are better than this. I'm not going to say by a huge margin, but I would say, for example, Fair Trade is a better episode of Voyager than this. And it's a better episode because it's not a bottle episode. Because it is a buildup of what happened before and lays groundwork for what happens after. It's a character study where what happens has consequences, directly and indirectly, as we saw afterwards. Like, that, to me, is better than this because this ultimately meant nothing. It was cool. It was a cool hour and a half of TV. I was very entertained by it. But when thinking about a television show over the course of 7 years, and the payoff you get as a viewer from watching that is seeing the characters change, seeing continuity, seeing things build, and this doesn't mean anything to that. It's just this hour and a half movie. And it's neat, but it's not my favorite, and I don't think it would be even in my top 5.
You're just racist against bottle episodes.
Yeah, I am racist against bottle. You got him. You got me.
I'd have to really sit down and put some real thought into if I think this is the best episode to date. I would counting parts 1 and 2 as one episode, I would certainly put it top 3. And I'll have to sit down and put some real time and see where else it goes. But in the sea of filth that season 4 has been up to this
point. I mean, no doubter, this is a heads and tails of anything we've seen over the last several weeks.
This isn't just a life preserver thrown out into a sea of shit. This is like the lost city of Atlantis, raising up from an ocean of poop to elevate the viewers to good sanctuary.
Yeah,
great Trek.
Yeah.
So I'm feeling it's good, and it's good at provoking thought. It's great acting.
And it's
a prison episode.
I keep looking over at my computer screen, and it's
Zoobly Zoo.
It's got Zoobly Zoo characters all over it. And
this pours all.
I regret everything about the last 2 hours.
Yeah. All right, man. I don't have Netflix pulled up, so I don't know what's going to happen next here. Maybe you can do me the honors over here.
Let's see. Okay, Voyager.
All right, so after this, we're going into Season 4, Episode 10, Random Thoughts, and we see Tuvok, and he's putting the hands on what can't be Saskia, but some other lady with face makeup.
It's got to be B'Elanna.
You think it's B'Elanna?
Oh, yeah, that's B'Elanna. That's
E.
Ridges. Those are B'Elanna.
Oh, okay,
that's
all
B'Elanna.
right. Voyager visits a planet with a telepathic race that outlaws negative thoughts, and B'Elanna is charged with releasing an angry thought. This is, looks like stupid Next Gen Season 1 crap where Wesley goes in the flower bed. Was that Angel 1? Was that what that was called?
Yeah, I remember that episode. I forget the name of it, but yeah.
Is this going to be covered in people, bodybuilders and models wearing loincloths?
We can only be so lucky.
Because otherwise it's just going to be more crappy crap. Sorry, we got too good there for a second. We got to drag the series back in the trash.
Thank you for listening to this special 2-part edition of V'ger Please.
One too.
We appreciate you sticking with us. You can always reach us at v'gerplease@gmail.com, Twitter at v'gerplease, on Facebook, V'ger Please, and of course our V'ger Please Trauma Support Group on Facebook. If you want to chat about Star Trek stuff, share spicy memes, or otherwise talk about the show, we will always welcome you. And until next time, peace.